to PL Express, then there is so much to talk about in terms of Premier League this week. We have to start with Tottenham Hotspur. They continue to fly high at the top of the table. It's been brilliant to see, Janusz, but can they maintain this form?
Well, I think for the time being, absolutely. I think if Heung-min Son continues to do what he does, I think there's a real belief in the team with the new manager, and that happens. Of course, everybody's kind of waiting for them to drop points to see what the reaction is going to be, because there's still a lot of new players. There's some young players, and now I think they have Chelsea at home in the next game, so that will be a test. No matter what you think of Chelsea, and them, of course, dropping points at Stamford Bridge to Brentford. My big question will be, look, I think from what I see, real contender for the top four. I don't think that's going to be a title contender, because I continue, just as everybody, I continue to say that Manchester City, which they've proven against even United, as bad as they have been as of late. My one question will be, if Son doesn't score goals, who will? Because I don't know. Because Kulusevski is not a goal scorer. We all know that. Historically hasn't shown that. We know Richarlison has been struggling, and doesn't seem to me that all of a sudden is going to wake up and score goals consistently, even if you put him as a center forward, which in the absence of Son, he would be there. So I think that's a massive question for Spurs, because here we are. We'll talk about it maybe a little bit later too. Are they better or worse? Harry Kane, this or that. But think about that. In the past, when one was off, there was one scoring consistently. Let's not forget Heung-min Son in his last season. Now it's Heung-min Son. He's benefited from the fact that Harry Kane's left. But if he's not there, then I'd have a major question about Spurs.
So you're continuing to say that they are not better off without Harry Kane?
Which is, of course, nonsense. I'm sure that Andrew would say that right away. I mean, dynamics are different. I think the roles may have changed, and we would have to trust in Ange Postecoglou, because he's pulled all the right strings. And I think everybody would benefit, because, as I've said, why not have two strikers? I mean, the teams that are doing well in Premier League, we all know Erling Haaland scoring consistently. You look at Liverpool, the front 3, 4, or 5, whatever you want to call them, whoever's playing, scoring goals. I look at Aston Villa and Unai Emery, who at times we called defensive-minded manager, Ali Watkins, and host of other players that are contributing to that team. And then we have Manchester United's, and we have Chelsea's that are struggling scoring. So you tell me that Ange Postecoglou wouldn't find a way to integrate Harry Kane into it. Harry Kane, who, by the way, how many goals he's got at Bayern Munich right now? How many seasons is that he's been scoring? So, of course, I hope that nobody questions that.
He can't stop scoring. But what is it about this collective that you like that's really ticking under Ange Postecoglou? Obviously, the manager is a massive part of it. What else is it that stood out to you? I
just think it's his personality. I think the message of saying that we want to attack, we want to have fun, something that Spurs players had under Mauricio Pochettino, those 2 or 3 years where they're in the final of the Champions League and pushing at the top of the Premier League as well. And I think the moment that, the likes of Mourinho and Antonio Conte came in, you kind of playing the football that you don't want to play. You're playing the football that fans don't want to watch. And we've said it, if they deliver, because Mourinho and Conte are serial winners, if they deliver, then I suppose nobody cares how you did it, but they came nowhere near.
Okay, got to move to talk about Manchester United, and there is a lot to talk about here. Recently, Roy Keane came out to say that Bruno Fernandes is not captain material for Manchester United and that he should be stripped of the captaincy. He said he's a brilliant footballer, but he's not captain material, doesn't like his attitude. It was unacceptable in that defeat to City, highlighting the whinging, the moaning, the throwing the arms up in the air. Do you agree?
I do. I don't think this is anything new. I think we've been saying here, and by the way, I've heard Roy Keane say that many, many months ago. So this is not something. You look at his body language, but forget about his whinging and all of that, because this was interesting watching this game, for example. Because if you look at Manchester City, there are so many heroes, so many captains. Because you can right away say, if not him, whom, right? And although you could pick one or two, I suppose it's more about how many captains, how many leaders you have. And I don't think Manchester City are short on that. But forget who on Manchester City could be, but compare the two key players in that game, or at least for Manchester City for me, and the brilliance of Bernardo Silva. Two players from the same country, two players from the same national team. And yet you had a feeling that Bruno Fernandes wasn't even in the same neighborhood in terms of quality shown on the pitch. Bernardo Silva, tactically, absolutely outstanding. Here's a player that could whinge a little bit because he's been used just about everywhere, sometimes to a great degree, sometimes not so much when he was played at left back. But it's not easy to always be in form and always stand out. So to me, it's what you do on the pitch. And I haven't seen it this season from Bruno Fernandes. He was better in seasons past. But, aside from the whinging, at some stage, you have to, I don't want to say gain the trust of the players, but you have to stand up. And I thought that Bernardo Silva was absolutely outstanding in that game. And in my opinion, man of the match. And yet these players know each other very, very well. Bruno Fernandes doesn't seem super vocal. His body language is positive, and he drives his team. And Bruno Fernandes failed in that throughout the season so far.
So if he's stripped of it, so if he was to be stripped of it, who would be a worthy captain from what he's got to choose from now?
Well, I mean, the easiest one would be to go to Casemiro, but Casemiro's not playing right now. I almost wonder, and again, I don't know him personally. I don't know the feeling around, but I tell you what, I wonder if Luke Shaw shouldn't be that player. I think they can't wait to see him. We've seen the issues they had at center back, which is nonsense. I'll get to it in a second. We remember last season how big of a role he played, not just as a left back, but remember the number of games where Ten Hag used him as a center back over the likes of Maguire's and anybody else for that matter. When they played three in the back, it was kind of Luke Shaw played very, very well. Looks like a strong and hard man playing every game last season at a certain good level as well. And he's obviously a bit of a veteran now on this team as well. So I wonder if I had to pick without knowing a player and how he is in the dressing room, I'd go there maybe before I go to Casemiro.
Do you know what, Janusz, we often talk about, if you have to get rid of this number of players at Manchester United, who would it be? We're going to reverse that right now. And we're going to say if there's 5 players there right now that you absolutely must keep hold of, who would they be?
Yeah, I can't. It'd be pushing. I mean, I don't want to spend the next 2 minutes here trying to think, who's doing well, because nobody is. I think ultimately, if you look at the players like Luke Shaw, I still think that Onana may come good. A couple great saves against Holland in that last game. Lisandro Martinez obviously is a warrior. You can tell. You can say all you want about him because he does have ups and downs in his game as well. But I think he's a warrior, and at times like these, that's important. Luke Shaw, I've mentioned. McTominay, as crazy as it sounds. As crazy as it sounds right now. Now, he may not be the level of what we think of Manchester United, but the guy is leaving his heart on his sleeve. So there's no questions about that. Rashford, maybe, just because, I mean, when he's on, he's on. Højlund is young, so that's probably something that you want to make sure you get better out of him. Varane, still to me, a veteran, a player that's won everything, so I keep him. But yeah, I mean, this is all pushing it at the moment.
Well, given that you mentioned heart, I just want to bring up that quote you may remember from when Ralf Rangick was in charge, saying that this is not cosmetic, it is open heart surgery taking over at this Manchester United team. And if you look at it right now, this is the most losses for United in a league season at this point since the 86-87 season. They've lost half of their games in the Premier League this season. It's not about to get much easier. Obviously, they're in cup action this week against Newcastle as well. Let's talk about Erik Ten Hag, because it's something that's been discussed a lot on the FC show this week. He's not getting a lot of sympathy right now from everybody. Is he the right man for the job?
Well, first and foremost, Ralf Rangick got that wrong. At the very least, he got that backwards because Erik Ten Hag came in and did perform heart surgery. That was the easy part. Sustaining it and making sure that cosmetically you evolve that team. That's the issue. So I get what he was trying to say, but I think that Erik Ten Hag came in. That was an open heart surgery, getting rid of Ronaldo, getting rid of Maguire. We'll get to him again, I suppose, because now he tells us that tactically he was a better choice than Varane, who's won the World Cup, Champions League, and every trophy just about possible, right? So that's the issue cosmetically. That's where I start to doubt Erik Ten Hag, because for him to say that tactically he made that choice was absolutely crazy. To put out there a Maguire, who he surgically removed in that heart operation right away, to put him next to Johnny Evans, who I got respect for, but he's a player that was probably thinking about ending his career and came to train with Manchester United in hopes to catch on any team. Probably he'd settle for a championship team, I bet. This is where you have to doubt Erik Ten Hag, because after a season like last year, where we gave him a lot of credit, after that open heart surgery, now was the time to kind of cosmetically get the team to the next level, slowly but surely, but not in a way that we have it right now. Some of the interviews that I've heard, people asking him, I think, about, can this team play like Ajax? And he said, I'm paraphrasing, really kind of said no, because we don't have the players. You do have the players. You brought a lot of players that from an inferior league. And I wouldn't say that before, but all the players, I'm not going to, the Antonys and Malacias and, many, many others that he's brought are not up to this level. But even if I can agree to the fact that, of course, this team is not going to play like Ajax. Well, I think there was an unwritten promise that this team would play at least close to what Ajax does. And that means with high pressure, with a little bit of flowing game, attacking game. And yet we see quite the opposite. So you can certainly understand what Rangnick tried to say, but he did it backwards, and it's not necessarily looking good for him.
Okay, right. Well, let's move on to welcome in Ryan O'Hanlon. As I said, back by popular demand. We've got to talk some power rankings, Ryan. I actually laughed because I saw that yourself and Billy Connolly were involved in the latest Premier League power rankings for ESPNFC.com. And he actually tweeted it out saying one of the most writing about European soccer for an American audience ideas. I love this as well, because it's interesting to see it, isn't it? When you look at the way you guys have put your power rankings together, this is not just looking at the Premier League table and seeing it that way. So let me tell you how the power rankings look right now, according to these guys. And then, Ryan, you can tell us why and how the most recent have been decided. So you've got City at number 1. Behind them, it's Liverpool at number 2. Arsenal at number 3. 4 is Newcastle/Spurs. Then we've got Brighton and Villa. So tell us how you came up with these.
Yeah, like with our power rankings, we want to do it in terms of if any of these teams played each other on a neutral field in the near future, who would we expect to win? And if the teams ranked higher than them, we would expect Manchester City to beat Arsenal on a neutral field. I know that goes against with what just happened with Arsenal and Manchester City, but I think the betting markets, and I think the average soccer watcher would probably agree with us. So we each rank our teams and then we add them up to produce a kind of a super ranking, if you will. And so the top 3 we've done 3 sets of the rankings so far. The top 3, Manchester City was number 1 in all 3. Arsenal was number 2 in the first one, and then there were 3 in the most recent 2. And Liverpool are 2, and there were 2 last time. So that's roughly maintained the same. While Spurs and Newcastle have both moved up, and they're currently tied at 4. And I think that maybe that pairing kind of speaks to what you're saying, right? Where Tottenham are in first, have the most points in the league. Newcastle are significantly out of the top 4 currently, but I think that there's an interesting conversation about, would you rather be the team that has the points in the bank, but maybe the performances backing up those points aren't as good? Or would you rather be Newcastle, where you're kind of smashing most of the teams you play, but the results aren't quite going your way?
Yeah, I like the way it was described actually in the piece as well, where you're talking about it being performance or results that you're looking at. But just going back to the Liverpool and Arsenal flip-flopping as well, you're saying that here the battle for second continues. Do you see this trend continuing?
Yeah. I think that, like, determining whether Arsenal or Liverpool are the fundamentally better team, I feel like that's like those 2 teams are like closer than any 2 teams in the league, probably. And we have them second and third, but it's not unfortunately, when you rank teams 1 to 20, you don't have degrees of difference, right? I think there'd be a decent gap between second and first, and then 2 and 3 would be right together. If we could, maybe we should use decimal points or something in the future to make it more clear. But I think the reason both of us had Liverpool second in our rankings, and I think we do because I think it seems like Liverpool has a little bit higher of a ceiling, and most of the players they've signed over the summer have come in and made a difference. While Julian Timber's injured, out for most of the season, if not the year for Arsenal, Kai Havertz just hasn't really made the team better. And on top of that, Liverpool are in fourth currently, have same goal difference, expected goals difference as Arsenal, despite having 4 red cards already this season. So I think what Liverpool are where they are with 4 red cards speaks to a team that is probably better than where they are on the table. And Arsenal have had 6 penalties this year, which is the rest of the league is averaging 1. So if those things kind of even out, I think we give Liverpool the slight edge.
So here's the thing. I can speak for Janusz here to say that he would pretty much agree with City being top of the power rankings, just because he's usually saying City are the team to beat, right? Janusz?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Second, I could flip-flop on that as well. I mean,
well, that's why I want to go with. So knowing that you'd probably go for City anyway, and you'd agree with that, just looking at it from a viewer's point of view, obviously Ryan's breaking down a lot of the stats for us there and what we're looking at and what we're taking into account. Just from you watching, Janusz, do you put Liverpool ahead of Arsenal too?
Only because I think, and Ryan may have said that, I think there's more to come from Liverpool. It still hasn't been great, but there's a lot more to come. Given where they are right now, maybe a little bit of a surprise to some or many, I don't know, after last season as well. But I just think that there's a lot more to come, and the ability to change the front line, of course, when everybody's healthy, second to none. Midfield, of course, is brand new, and there were a lot of question marks, and we've seen from Gravenberch, even in Europe, maybe more so in Europe than in the league just yet, because he's maybe hasn't gotten those chances. I think Szoboszlai is a spectacular player. I expect a lot more from him. I think McAllister, when maybe Liverpool finds a way to push him forward a little bit, I think we're going to see even better from that. I see Van Dijk getting better and better. That to me is very, very important. And an exceptional goalkeeper as well, where you look at Arsenal and you can have question marks in terms of who should be playing, what they're doing, and all that. So I could put Liverpool there from that standpoint. My issue in that ranking is Spurs, because I mean, they are top of the table. Although I think I've said it earlier that I wonder what may happen to Spurs if they lose Heung-min Son, who's going to be scoring goals. But if I look at Newcastle and some of the issues with Tonali they have, Murphy came back, he's injured again. Isak's injured now. I look at Sven Botman, who for me is massive, and I think he just had a setback as well. I'm not sure when he's going to come back. I like Lascelles, but I think the center of defense, which is very, very important, or has been defensively. Remember how good Newcastle were defensively last season. If that goes now for a long period of time, which it sounds like, that may be an issue. The fact that Newcastle will be playing in Europe for a long time. If it's not Champions League, they'll be in Europe, and Spurs won't. I just think being where they are right now, I think I put Spurs in that 4th spot over Newcastle.
Let me ask as well, Ryan, one of the questions in your own piece is Villa. Can they keep on rising? What does everything tell you?
I don't think so, and I think it's because what we just said, right? I think the top 3 is really strong. I can differ with Janusz about how good Spurs actually are, but I wouldn't, put them any lower than 5th right now in terms of projecting them forward. And Newcastle, same thing. So, there you have 5 teams that I think are just all. I mean, we saw Newcastle and Villa on the opening weekend. I think that was a good kind of summation of the quality of the 2 teams. So I think there's just a ceiling on really where Villa can go. Anything can happen. Leicester won the league. So they're in the realm, I guess, of a couple of bounces going their way for the rest of the year and sneaking in. I think maybe they want to hope that the Premier League gets that 5th Champions League spot if they want to have a real shot of getting there.